I'm here to tell a story in real time that's going on today about how myself and some others are trying to bootstrap a bottom-up service design practice at Intuit. So like Jamin said, I was here a year ago in this room at this conference. You can see me there in the picture in the back. And I met a woman who would become my boss here, and we just happened to sit next to each other randomly at a table, and I could tell she wasn't really watching what was going on. She was looking at the people, so I said, you're here recruiting for somebody, aren't you? And she was like, oh, yes, how did you know? I said, well, you look very uptight. And so we got to talking, and I was here on my own dollar, flew myself out, paid for it. My wife, I'm still paying it off on a credit card, because these things are very expensive to pay for on your own, but that's how much I cared about it. So as we got talking, she was like, well, all this stuff we're seeing here at these conferences, I want to do that at Intuit. And I was like, OK. So I went back home. I lived in Salt Lake City. We went through the interview, the phone screen process, and from the first call to Intuit to the offer was 12 days. And a week later, I moved here to Mountain View to work as Intuit's first proper service experience professional. But really, what my job is being the change management instigator for service design. So everyone here probably has either used an Intuit product or has gone to a business that uses an Intuit product. But do you guys even know what Intuit makes? Because I didn't really. And they've got a whole bunch of products and product lines that span all sorts of various things in the financial services, money in, money out of personal budgets and businesses. And Quicken, TurboTax, QuickBooks, the stuff that's kind of people have heard about. It's been around forever. But as I start to look around, there's all sorts of other things that actually happen inside of this huge product ecosystem that Intuit is building up inside these brands for a very, very, very long time compared to some of the other places that are tackling service design. Not as long as Nordstrom, but this is what Quicken 1.0 looked like in 1983. And Scott Cook, the founder and the guy who came up with Quicken, to solve a problem for his wife was having a hard time balancing her checkbook, came up with this idea. And I don't know if you know, but Intuit was one of the first companies to do user testing by taking these Amiga computers out on the streets in 1983 and test with people, and then fix the code and then test it again. And so the company has a long history of being user-focused. And just to give you a comparison there's Erik version 2.5 in 1983. And so Intuit has evolved, and you've probably seen these. And Intuit is a big company. It's a $25 billion company with almost 10,000 employees. And yet, I've had friends that work for TurboTax that you see in Staples and Walmart during tax season that they say, I work at Intuit. I don't know what that is. Well, they make TurboTax. Like, oh, yeah. Or I tell to my family, yeah, I work for QuickBooks. So I work for the business end. So Intuit's gone through all that box software of the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And did very well. It's a huge company. And now it's moving on into the cloud and flat design, and UX is a huge focus, and SaaS, even though does the last S in SaaS even really mean service in the way we think about it? And is a monthly subscription technically a service? And then adding on all sorts of connected devices and other things that are creating more of this ecosystem web of service that we offer customers. But as a kind of a business to small business, we offer people things that let them offer services to customers. And the company is very, very, very user experience design focused. There's over 200 UX designers at Intuit. And even the CEO himself, Brad Smith, says Intuit is a design-led company. He will tell you that, like to your face today. It is a design-led company. But it's product design. And it's user experience design. And it's not service design. And trying to bridge the gap between, well, UX design is just, service design is UX applied to the intangible, right? It's easy. You just information architecture things that you can't see. Well, so I'm there and saying, OK, how do I translate what service design is to a company that's been very successful, almost as long as I've been alive, 200-something UX designers there that, I mean, they've been doing their thing, and Intuit pushes that culture and design for delight, deep customer empathy. It's ingrained into, the whole company. So how do I explain what we're trying to do with service design, how it's different? So I do what any smart, young, good-looking service design professional would do, and you just email this to everybody. And you just say, OK, I want you to look through this PDF, and we're going to go through it, and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to go like this and kind of skim the thing, and it's just like wavy lines. And people see this, and they get it. They love it. This is how humans think. This is how we experience services, is in this totality of a journey. And so it's like, yeah, of course, this is what we want to do. We've been talking end to end for years, and we just want to start acting end to end. So I go, great, well, I have one more other thing. And I print this out, the Rail Europe experience map from Adaptive Path. And if you don't have these, you need to go get them. And this is printed out, and it's hanging up in people's cubicles, because you look at it and you understand it. And it's like, yeah, oh my God, can we get this for Intuit? And I'm like, yes, that's what we're going to be going for. Yes, we're going to do that. And so I send that out, I get talking, and all of it just disappears into the black hole of the inbox, because people who aren't designers and aren't into experience don't care about the art and poetry of what we're trying to do. They care about results. And if you tell a product manager in India that he needs to get excited about service design, just sending PDFs and exciting things that designers like won't work. But at least I had started an illustration of where I want to try to take the company, and gave them something to think about of, OK, there's this weird thing, service design. I still get either asked if I'm a UX designer and re-explain that, or if I'm a service designer where I design service APIs and back-end infrastructure, because we're also a company of services in that sense as well. So here's the first thing. This is the first mini project that started the service design capability journey at Intuit. So I look around at all these things around me. I don't know the company. I don't know the people. Mountain View campus has 15 buildings, and I'm the only person on my team there in Mountain View. So I just say, OK, well, what do we even have? No one has end-to-end services. No one has these blueprints or journeys to give me. All I have is all the things we've made all over the years. Some things that are well-designed, not so well-designed. Some things that are old and new, connected, not connected. Just all the stuff that a 31-year-old company that's very successful builds up over time. And so where was I going to get that first sort of foothold into where do we start? What is a service designer going to start doing? Well, there was one place that did know the end-to-end. It did know the experiences. And it was the voice of the customer data and the people in the care organization. And we've got data for decades on how people use the product or what they experience. And if you want to know what's going on in your services and you don't have them designed and they aren't mapped out, just look in your care data. Look at the output of that, like the bloodstream. Look at what the toxins are being produced by what's in the organism. And so we get the drivers for what we want to service design out of the care data. I wouldn't have known that when I showed up. I thought you just show up and design things. I'm a designer. It was just user experience, right? It's service design. Well, no, we had to have something that mattered, and we had to have some sort of delta between good experience and bad experience in the experience journey to even start with. So we took one of the most common use cases that was causing some sort of issues or had a journey that was a little bumpy, and that had to do with how people essentially acquire and install, start to use the QuickBooks product, one of the biggest products that we have. So project one is that we put together a small team over 2 different video feeds and the phone. And you can see a camera into a room in Tucson with some people there and another webcam to someone in Toronto. And we got this group together because they represented the parts of that service we wanted to map out for the first time. Not the designers of the product, but the backstage people and the people who are responsible for the support and implementation of the service that was disjointed. And so they were disjointed. That's why we're on 2 phones and 2 cameras. And what we're looking at here is Intuit's first bona fide service blueprint of this process. And this is very crude and rudimentary. I hope Patrick's not looking at it. Because it's just a very simple scenario across the top, and then kind of the custom-made layers of backstage, front stage, what do they see, what do they do, whatever we needed to make this happen. Because again, I'm not delivering food in a city door to door. I'm trying to build those same service design practices inside of a software company that 10 years ago made its money selling boxes in Walmart and Staples or off Amazon. But I mean, you can go down and get boxed software, what? And how are you going to service design that? What does that even mean? Well, so we go through and we create this first service blueprint. It took a couple days, didn't really know what to do. The people we were doing it with weren't very familiar. But on the phone, when we were done, and when I converted this to a PDF with OmniGraffle, and I just redrew the Post-it notes, one of the backstage people says this: "I've been working on this for 6 years, and I've never seen the end-to-end experience." And so that, I guess, would be my mini victory number 1, the validation that, OK, this does have value, and it does have value bringing in these people who actually work on it, but didn't design it and didn't build the product. But they're responsible for this journey we're making people go through, and now they finally see it. And if they're finally seeing it, now I have more information to go, are we really design-led then if we don't know this? And how do we get all of us to know this and come to expect this? So the outcome of that matters isn't that we had a blueprint that was really special and accurate and we were going to start solving things with. It was that I had something to point to now that the company could identify with. And everyone in the company knows about QuickBooks. And everyone knows that there are, a company of this size with this many products, there's hundreds of offerings, thousands of SKUs, and all these different types of connected services you can make a service experience out of. They can see themselves in this. And so now it's not a PDF, and it's not something I went to Pinterest and typed service blueprint to give them examples of. It's something real. But it was very limited in its scope. It didn't do anything other than give me, my paycheck for that week of like, look, I did a service blueprint. That's what I'm supposed to do. So we had to go after something much bigger in a much bigger way. And I'm telling you this story as it happened. I've only been there for 9 months. So we needed gravity. We needed something huge to get this going and kick it off. So my voice of the customer partner, she went back, and she said, let's take one of the biggest things we have coming out of the care data and do a full-blown, exhaustive service blueprint of this, top to bottom, end to end. We'll get all the people together, and we will actually go to the hilt with what all the service design websites and blogs and conferences say we should be doing, and we'll do it with something that might just be the most high-profile case in the small business QuickBooks half of the company. And so we pulled together a team of people that were represented by the backstage of that service. And I don't know how it happened before, But at other places I've been, you probably would have pulled together the designer and the developers and the product manager and maybe the group manager of the product. But we didn't do that. We just found people who actually support the service on the back end, the pillars that actually have to deal with what is created. And so the backstage people, we had 5 people join myself and the voice of the customer leader. And they came up, and we got this team together in a war room in one of our offices, and we took 4 days. And we said, we're going to come out of this 4-day, how many hours is that? 48-something hours total, grind fest. We're going to come out with the service blueprint for this experience of how do you purchase, or how do you select and purchase and download or install or bring home from Best Buy and open the box, and how do you do the whole process of acquiring the product that we sell and using it for the first time and then getting care if you need it, the entire recapitulation of the life cycle of what we sell. We don't even have that, as you saw from the guy who hadn't seen it in the 6 years he's worked on it. So for 2 days, we fought and argued and tried to say, well, how do we even do service design in this company? These are not UX people. These are not design people in the group. We had myself, and we had an interaction designer and a visual designer who work with me that were there to help facilitate the process, but the actual data and the things we needed were coming out of the people who actually know what's going on in the backstage and with the systems and with the, they receive the ramifications of how a service is designed. Those are the first 2 days, just distilling down what it meant for our company. The next 2 days, we actually started to get some work done and started to put together what would become the framework of how we're trying to implement service experience design at Intuit. And so we went hours and hours and hours into the service blueprint because it turns out we don't know what actually happens. We know what happens. We don't know how it works. And we'd get to spots in this blueprint where we're we're at this step here, and something happens in this process in the back end, or something happened up in the front, and it sends an email, and the people are supposed to receive it, and something. But how did that even actually happen? What got triggered to that? And how did that tie that to this customer? And now we're asking them to do this thing, and then they call support. We don't know. This is just how it works. The customer has made it work for all these years by assembling all those things themselves. Well, the service blueprint is now us assembling it as it is, so we can maybe start to rearrange and disassemble it. And so while we are doing this work, at the same time, Chris, the visual designer, was building a nice, glossy, full-color service blueprint that I would have when it was done, because I had to have something to take out of this and go report back so that it didn't just turn into a workshop. It didn't just turn into a, hey, we're going to go do this mapping thing, and then you're all going to go back and do your regular jobs, and this isn't the new way we are going to work. No, this is the new way we're going to work, so I had to come back and have something to show even bigger than before of, hey, you know that thing we've been working on for years? This is what it actually looks like. So we designed it there in real time. We broke all the designers' best practices and went high fidelity right from the get-go. And now I'm very happy to show you Intuit's first real service blueprint that came out of that meeting. Yeah, thank you. And again, this is not a, don't clap yet. This is not an improved blueprint yet. This is just what we have. But out of this came 17 opportunities on where we could fix it that could then be taken back and roadmapped and resourced and say, what is it actually going to take to fix this line and whatever else? So what did we end up with? A new team working in a new way that had built a new thing. And so I took that service blueprint. I printed it out on 4 11 by 17-inch pieces of paper and taped it together because we were going to have a product review with the senior vice president of the small business organization. And I was terrified. I'm going to go in to this review with this service blueprint. What does that even mean? This is a software company. And I'm going to set it down in front of him instead of doing the PowerPoint. We're going to explain what we did and what we discovered and how we'd like to proceed and try to work on this service. And so very intimidating. I go in and I print them out, and they're not really taped good. They're kind of I'm like, here you go. And this is what he says. This is what I mean when I say we need to work end to end. I was like, oh, thank God, service design is going to have a chance. Because we had gone in aligned to his motivation of wanting to see business results based on what this blueprint that existed. It had already existed. It just hadn't been documented. He wanted to see what we could do with that. And there it was. So the next phase, this one was kind of more of a chance. We had these two things we'd done, the original proof of concept and then the first project, and we needed to scale it up into something even bigger. We had to keep the momentum going. So the same voice of the customer enthusiast said, hey, I got this great idea. Every year, the CARE organization gets together and holds a summit. Let's take it over, and instead of doing the standard corporate 2-day retreat, let's just do a service design workshop. So I said, OK, let's do it. Put together a whole bunch of materials, a whole bunch of worksheets and instructions, things that would show people how to do a service blueprint. These are not designers. These are not people who have ever done this before. These are all the backstage people that work in the CARE organization who are seeing this stuff for the first time. And yet, when they start to do the service blueprinting based upon the exercises, they know all the answers. Well, why is that? Because they support the service. The product people know how the product works, but no one strings it together. And so they all started doing the same mini version of service blueprinting, these use cases we provided. And one of the things that was very important to me was that I'm not the one who's teaching it there. And it was the people who had done it in the other group before that was communicating it and showing it to everyone else that they work with. So we went through and guided people in making different types of blueprints. A lot of these, they weren't perfect. They're not things you would ever actually use. Some of them weren't even realistic. But we weren't there to instruct people how to do service design. We were there to cultivate the sentiment around wanting it to be a part of our company. And in these groups, it just so happened that the vice president of that organization, a vice president of development, and one of the product leaders was there at the summit, and I kind of somehow cajoled them into actually sitting at the tables and doing the exercises with everyone else. So they got to see, oh, we're making a service blueprint, and oh, wow, I'm not even sure I could put this together on my own. And that's when they started to take notice that there is something going on with service design in a company that already understands being design-led, but this is a whole new type of design. This is the design of experiences. And user experience really is focused on the design of products and apps. And we could try to say that, no, it's the whole end-to-end holistic experience. It's not. Otherwise, I wouldn't be at a place with 200 UX designers teaching service design for the first time. So as a result of this big workshop, I got the one thing out of it that I really needed to stay motivated and to validate that this can even work. And it was one of the phone care agents that emailed me the next day. And he said, do you have any templates I can use to start doing this myself? Because there are some things that I've been noticing and some things I'd like to map out. I don't know how to do it. So now, the first person to reach out to me on their own to learn to do service design, it's not a designer. It's not any of the UX people. It was someone who worked the phones and had never built a product or designed anything in their life. And that's how the following grows. And so I'm leading everybody around now talking about this thing that at Intuit, if you want to come down to Mountain View, it's just called blueprinting. All of service design, everything we've talked about, everything you read, everything in the books is now just called blueprinting at Intuit. And I'm fine with that. So Erik comes and helps do blueprinting. We do blueprinting. Sometimes we're not even doing service blueprinting, but that's just what it's called. So that kind of really takes you up to today. It hasn't been that long of a journey yet. And so successes and failures, I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen. This is something that's, again, a ground-up bootstrapped effort. There is no executive mandate. There's no funding. I don't have a crazy cool design space. All those pictures I took were just on my iPhone of us moving apart cubicles. And so here are the things that I've learned so far that I would want to leave with you today about the change management, critical aspects of or service design change management. The first one is to find allies and people who already get it and already believe in how this works. And they're out there. They're like the tinfoil hat people in the X-Files. You need to find them. I can't tell you how, but I can recommend sending around Adaptive Path PDFs over email to everyone until someone responds. Because with them, you're going to have a lot of intangible work you're creating. Because most of service design stuff they're not something you ship. You don't go say, I'm going to sell you this service, customer. They buy it and they experience it, but they see touch points and the things that they can feel and see, not the interstitial space between everything. So you have to make all that intangible work tangible. Understanding each other's motivations. Sue talked about this yesterday. You have to appeal to the motivations and interests of the partners and the leaders and the people you're trying to put upon service design with. And that you have to have that shared interest and a shared motivation to even want to do this at all, to work in a new way with new overhead and new processes and new things that might not necessarily feel like they're going to help, or if they are going to help, they make things slower. So you leverage all the existing objectives. So everything I'm doing and I'm focusing on is something that's already going on, and now it's kind of a let's make old things new type process when we go through and select what are we going to work on next, what's the next service design project. It keeps the PR campaign going, because in a company like where I'm at, or any situation where you're trying to build capability where it doesn't exist, it's just a constant effort to let people know what you're doing, who you are, what's different between you and other designers, or what's different between you and a product manager, what is service design at all, or is it customer service design because you get data out of customer care? Are you designing how the phones work? What does that mean? Constantly have to be reiterating what it is you actually do. It's like how I felt as a UX designer 12 years ago. People don't get it, but once they start to see it, they might start to like it. Despite that, embracing the cultural immune system. Places where you're trying to build capability with something new and as strange as service design, especially in places that are experience-focused and design-led, it's not something that you can just accept and stop what they're doing and start doing service design because it looks really cool and creates these great artifacts. So it's long and slow process. I don't have an answer to this one other than roll with it. So how do you take the company that doesn't really understand that there is something beyond user experience and product design and illustrate to them that there is somewhere else we can go and convince them that they do want to go there? Where you literally have to show them something that is beyond what they know, drag them over to see it and experience it, like we did with the projects of involving people in the other in the workshops and involving the people on the backstage and letting them go through and do service design and get it so that they believe that it's actually something real and something that can work. And then that's the responsibility of any of you and me who are passionate about service design and teaching it as a new way of working, because it is the future of any company who wants to get on board and learn that service design is something that they should expect and not think it's just an experiment. Thank you.